BYD is coming in hot. They've got a lot of models, they've got a lot of discounts, they've got a lot of market growth. And last year they surpassed Tesla in the fourth quarter of the year. Didn't pass them for the whole year, but they did produce big numbers and they're looking like they're going to get even bigger. So I'm going to have a chat with Herbert, who knows a thing or two about a thing or 10. I'm Brian. Welcome to Futuraza. So, Herbert, you have seen the headlines. You know what's going on. You've seen all this great news for BYD. But the news doesn't stop. The hits just keep coming. They announced their refreshed E2 Compact starting 13% cheaper. It's now $12,000 for this car. That's compelling. What do you That's an amazing product for that price. Any thoughts on that one?
Sure. I mean, they just made some major announcements, right? Like a couple of weeks ago, they announced that they were going to do a supercar for $250,000, $230,000 US. Um, and then they announced what is it, 11,000? Is this the one? It's
This
a
is
new one,
not
right?
the
It's a different.
11,000.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
yeah. So they announced that one too. So clearly they have a target segment, which is a low cost producer. They've been doing this already. There's cars that are worth $5,000. So it depends on the quality versus the segment. And I give it to them. I bet you that they've done a good job. What we've been hearing from BYD is that they're pretty better. They're much better quality than you realize. So I've interviewed Michael Dunn. I've interviewed other people that were living directly in China to really understand what's happening there. And yes, it's true. These Chinese manufacturers are doing a great job. They've basically taken over, but they have the ability to produce low cost segments. And I think that they will do very, very well. So this is great.
It,
Yeah.
it's it's amazing what they're doing. So let's look at this one here. There
Mhm.
is BYD to slash prices even more as they're looking to crush internal combustion car sales. You don't need to go to 11,000 to beat the other EVs, but if you're going after the dyno burners, you need to get real aggressive. So this article covers a lot more models because here we're looking at the Dolphin. This is the one. It says 13.9, but was it the Dolphin? I don't remember. The one, this one.
That's the
Yeah,
one.
the
That's
Seagull.
11,000. The Seagull.
But
Mhm.
the price dropped since we discussed it. It's now under 10 grand in
That's
China.
amazing.
It is
Mhm.
amazing. And I got a lot of comments from people saying, oh, these things burn like crazy. They're always going up in flames. Haven't you seen? And every time I say, I ask
BYD
every
batteries.
time, where is the data? And the only thing I've gotten in response is links to anti-China websites
Mhm.
and blogs showing showing vehicles burning. Now, that all vehicles can burn. That's not a question. I need data. BYD doesn't use NMC batteries. They use LFP batteries, which are less prone to thermal runaway. All vehicles can burn. That's not a question. If you have that data, guys, in the comments, let me know. But just saying that China makes junk, who would buy such a thing, is a very antiquated notion. 20 years ago, I would have said the same thing, but here we are.
Yeah. So China's adoption of electric vehicles, as we know, is leading the world, right? For a variety of reasons. But the government has specifically both disincentives for ICE cars and incentives for electric vehicles. They're all in. And so these companies like this, the market is so massive, right? They're at 30%. Some people are thinking that it could have happened as soon as this year, where they're at I think depends on how you measure it, but 50% of all sales could actually become electric, not BEVs, but NEVs by the end of this year, or yeah, sometime by this year, 50%. And so when you have that massive of market, and it's actually even bigger than the U.S. market, it gives these guys a lot of running room to really go and hit the volume. Number one, to make these sales, to lower the price even further. And so anybody who thinks that, you know, uh, ICE vehicles are going to survive, and today we're seeing the pushback by OEMs, legacy, trying to convince the public, and there's a belief that the public are now believing that it's about choice, right? You got the ICE, you got the hybrids, and you got the EVs, and the EVs aren't quite ready. They're trying to push it that way. That might work here in the U.S., but it's not the case in China. They are doing very well, and they're selling well. And so it's a matter of Tesla coming in. Tesla's Model 3, Model Y is very, very successful there. So when the compact car comes in, it will still be very, very successful. It will eat into BYD sales. And so I think of them as competitors. I mean to say that the ones who choose EVs, it's not like you're going to the I should rephrase that, right? Because the market is growing so big that there's no eating into anybody's sales. I think that's the way to position that. Yeah.
That's a very good way to put it. And the notion that, well, we don't see the good data on fires because it's within China. Guys, they're a leading exporter of EVs. This is a big deal. And you could say we can put up all kinds of protectionist policies. And I see those in the comments. Oh, slam that door shut.
Mhm.
Somebody's going to step in and do it. But then we've got Europe. BYD's just getting started in Europe with plans to triple its EV market share. They've only been selling for a short time in Mexico. They're already something like 8% of the market. It is going real quick. And how do you do it? Well, you take the same approach Tesla has, and BYD aims for a 5% market share in Europe. That would be huge. Before it begins production in Hungary, they're looking to build a factory there. Now, these cars aren't always as cheap as a Tesla. They aren't always as good as a Tesla, and the margin isn't quite as good. But as long as the margin is positive, you can continue growing at unlimited speed, essentially. So there's a lot of opportunity there to keep growing.
BYD strategy in China is to be the low cost producer there, but in the US and Europe, their goal is to be seen as a high quality, high end car. Stella Lee, who's the president CEO of BYD in the US, Americas, came out and she was saying we're a technology company. That's why they're doing the supercar, right? They want to show that we're not just the low cost, cheap cars. But then they're building factories in Brazil and Mexico. And then now this a couple months ago, she came out and said very clearly, we are not intending to go into the US because we're focused on South America. But the reality is they are, right? They're just doing it for political reasons. It's an election year in the US. She has to be careful what she says at this point. Once the election happens, right? The tariffs that might come into play. So she's going to say, we're not trying to get into the US to kind of appease any fears and tamper down any kind of protests and so forth. But they're going to be building in Brazil and Mexico, and that's how they're going to get into the US anyways.
And if you look through the list of headlines for just searching BYD factory, you find Italy is courting them to please bring a factory. Hungary and Mexico appear to be done deals. We know from the conversation you and I had last week when we watched the video you brought up that Brazil is on the board. They're absolutely going to be doing that. So there's a lot of unstoppable growth there, and BYD is a force to be reckoned with. And I think they're just being grossly underestimated at this point. The thing about them being exported, you can't hide fires if those are a major problem. The thing
Yeah.
about quality, that notion is out of date. Your iPhone comes from there. Well, I don't want,
Mhm.
do you really want everything coming from China? It already does. I don't know if you've flipped over anything in your house that you've bought in the last 25 years, but it does say
Yeah.
HAN China. So I'm not sure how much of that fear. Well, yes, but that's because their government subsidizes EVs so heavily. All do. All of them. Our government does that too. It's the same practice. Well, I don't think the market should be choosing winners and losers. The
Mhm.
market, it does. If we're subsidizing oil to the tune of a trillion a year globally,
Mhm.
they're picking winners and losers, and what they're picking is a big loser in internal combustion. Splody juice needs to go the way the dinosaurs themselves did. Last one I would cover here real quick is big news, no news, no news. Xiaomi, what's the name of this company?
Xiaomi. Yeah.
They're preparing to enter the auto sector with a car
Mhm.
that definitely doesn't look like just a ripoff of a of a Taycan. Oh, I guess it does a little. It looks like a cross between the BYD Seal and the Taycan. It's a good looking car. It'll be interesting to see if this very large cell phone maker can make a go of it. It's pointed out here, Apple spent $10 billion over 10 years trying to build their car, but they weren't trying to build a car. They were trying to build a taxi,
Mhm.
a lifestyle taxi.
Yeah.
What do you think of this?
Yeah. I mean, so the experts I interviewed do pull out Xiaomi as something to watch, a company to watch, only because as you thought about this, right? It's actually traditional automakers who are encumbered with a legacy business. They're harder. It's hard, much actually. It's the opposite. People think it's harder for them to break into a new segment like an electric vehicle, and we're finding that out today. So it takes, and if this new vehicle is not just EV first, but it's also software first, and it might take a company like Xiaomi, who builds microelectronics and computers, to be able to then move into electric vehicles. Just something to watch because at least they're tech first, right? This company knows how to build tech, and we'll see how this works out.
If the price really is going to be in the 35 to 50,000 range, it's going to be a winner. They can sell at a loss for a period of time because they've got their other lines of industry to fall back on in terms of revenue. And what you were saying was so correct, but for reasons that really hurt your brain. Legacy guys could lead in EVs, but the problem is every EV they build takes away from their higher profit margin. So they end up
Yeah.
with their incentives being all out of whack. And do we really want to build a great EV if it's going to kill our cash cow? Guys, this can be your cash cow. Yeah, but that's like too many quarters away. And, the shareholder, I don't want to lose my seat on the board. And it's, it's crazy. The people in the best position to make EVs have the most strongest motivation to not make EVs. Very insane stuff. Herbert, I want to thank you for hanging out with me, for giving us some insights on BYD's rampant runaway path to victory. It's interesting and we'll watch it. If you have comments, please leave them below. Let's try and keep it productive and fact based. I beg of you. And everybody else, like, subscribe, do the usual things, and stay tuned. Stay juicy, and I cannot wait to hear from you clever robots on the flippity flop.